This live stream brought to you by the Excelsior Citizen and these generous sponsors. Our Excelsior Springs Hospital, where better care is right in your backyard. The Simmons Sales Team, your hometown realtors.
Whether we're talking about our dedication to preventing and restoring power outages, our pursuit of safety, or providing the best member experience possible, we are relentless in serving our communities.
Find out how you can advertise with Excelsior Springs' #1 community resource. Visit excelsiorcitizen.com today.
Gather various perspectives and insights that help us in our decision-making process. Our goal is to create a space where everyone feels comfortable sharing their thoughts, their concerns, and their ideas. We appreciate you being here today. We also are very grateful for the Excelsior Citizen who is streaming this conversation so that those who are unable to be here in person today can still watch this via Facebook Live or later via YouTube. And thank you to staff who gave up their time today to be here. We appreciate that. We will aim to provide everyone an opportunity to speak, but so far, I think there's only been one person who's decided to speak, so well, I thought we were going to have a long list. But if you do decide that you'd like to share something, please make sure you've signed in and that we've gotten your information. We'll open the floor. I'll call the individuals up that have signed up first to allow them to speak. Then we'll open the floor for others. And if during the listening session you hear a concern, thank you, Lisa, a concern, suggestion, or idea spoken by others, please refrain from restating that topic so that we can give everybody the opportunity to speak. We want to ensure that everyone has that chance. So please keep your comments concise. And if we call on you and you've signed up to speak and you've already heard stated what you wanted to state, it's okay just to say pass, and we'll know that it's already been acknowledged. We are only speaking about chickens during this session. So if you step up to the microphone and you begin speaking about something else, I will ask you to be seated and wait for a more appropriate time to speak because we are following an agenda closely. Please be respectful of everyone's opinions, even if they differ from your own. This session is designed for you to express your viewpoints, so don't hesitate to contribute. Our focus is the topic of backyard chickens. While related points come up, we'll try to keep everything centered specifically on chickens. I may have to pull out chicken jokes. Not really, because I'm really bad at that. If you disagree with an idea, focus on explaining your perspective versus on criticizing others. We'll begin with a brief overview of the topic and its potential benefits and concerns. We'll open the floor for individual viewpoints, questions, comments. Then we'll hear from the city planner, Chantel Fry, regarding what other communities have done regarding this issue. And then please note that what we hear today, this is in no way a final discussion. We'll be taking notes throughout the sessions to capture your key points and your concerns. This helps us to compile a summary that accurately reflects the discussion held here today, and then after this session, we'll share those comments with Planning and Zoning and our City Council. Our Planning and Zoning Commission will hear this as a change to a zoning code, and that is a public hearing. It is at a public hearing that you as citizens can come and speak about that issue. They will make a recommendation which will then go to City Council. The City Council meeting is a public meeting, and it doesn't have a specific point in the meeting where you would be allowed to speak again about that issue. Council may choose to allow you to do that, but the Planning and Zoning Commission is the appropriate place for you to come and speak about this if you have a desire for that. We believe we will hear this in our Planning and Zoning meeting in either September or October, which would put this back at the City Council in October or early November. And part of that is because we have requirements for noticing up changes and have to have a certain amount of time to be able to do that. So our speakers today have volunteered to be here to share their experiences and opinions, and we thank them for their time as they've given a lot of thought to this issue. And I want to particularly thank Valley Coleman for coming forward to request the conversation so that we could open the dialogue. She said to me afterwards she wasn't a public speaker, and so then I was like, well, how do you feel about sitting in front of a room and talking about it? So we appreciate you, Valley, for doing that. Thank you very much. So we're going to get started, and the way in which we're starting today is we're going to give Trevor and Vivian and Valley have put together a small presentation that they're going to give, and then we're going to have some conversation up here amongst your speakers, and then we'll ask some questions, and we'll open it up to those who want to speak today as well to come forward and speak. Our goal would be to be done by 5 p.m. But we don't want to cut anybody off, so we want to make sure that we've gathered all of the information today. So again, we'll go ahead and we'll get started with your presentation. And if you would just introduce yourselves real briefly.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
My name is Trevor Gritton, and this is my wife, Vivian Gritton. And
I'm Valley Coleman.
Valley Coleman.
I have been a member of Excelsior Springs since I was in 4th grade. So I'm just really excited to change the laws here.
And my wife and I, as you guys will hear in a second, we have actually been in Excelsior for about 11 months now. Before we get started with our presentation, can anybody go for a chicken joke?
Oh, yeah.
Does anybody know why the chicken crossed the road? Anybody? Because! Okay, there we go. Knock it off with a laugh. So my wife Vivian and I, our story actually started, I'm from Denver, Colorado, and she is from...
Roll Tide.
She's from Alabama. We actually grew up in the suburbs. We were city slickers, born and bred, 500 kids in our graduating class. The neighbor I lived next to for 6 years, had only met him once, didn't really know community, and knew nothing about farming. My grandparents, it skipped my parents' generation, but my grandparents, they farmed barley and alfalfa for Coors down in the St. Louis Valley of Colorado. But other than that, where we got a little bit of farming background is right after we got married in 2021, we moved to Montana and worked on a ranch, and we were in the sales profession for the 5 years before that, and just got a chance to slow down and really take some deep breaths spiritually and agriculturally, and that's kind of where we got our background to all of this. Now, about 11 months ago, like we said, we moved from Denver, Colorado, and we live right across from Dairy Bee now, up on Water Tower Hill, across from the old Isley School. I'm sure some folks remember, the old Isley School from back in the day. But yeah, we love Excelsior. We just felt the call to come out here and raise food in a healthy way, in a sustainable way for the community. And we go to church here now. We've planted roots, and we hope to buy land and raise a family out here. We really, really love it. Now, into the meat and potatoes of the benefits for chickens. Just the first one I want to start off with is they make great pets. Obviously, now that chicken you can see right there, I've got a point a little bit later as to why it looks so scraggly and why it looks so rough, but that's the first pro, is they make great pets, especially for the little ones. It's a great educational opportunity. I think Vivian and I are a testimony to the average consumer, and I'm sure some of us in this room can resonate with this, are a couple generations removed from the farm. I see folks all the time in their advanced years, and they remember so vividly growing up with chickens and growing up with a garden, and for a lot of us that skipped a generation, sometimes even a couple generations. So having chickens is a great educational opportunity to remember where our food comes from. Reduces food dependency. Now, I know a lot of us were all affected by the egg shortage and the egg crisis, so to say, back in the winter of this year and during COVID. Now, we were really fortunate not to experience that as much. We were working at a farm called Bee Hole again, Rachel and Scott Mosier. It's about 7 minutes off of Highway 10. We were working at a farm there, and it was just interesting to see the food dependency from the inside, and how it doesn't really affect us when we're growing our own food on our own land. So back to why this chicken looks so scraggly. Healthier eggs make healthier people. Now, the eggs that we get from the grocery store, from the supermarket, the majority of them are raised in a 1 cubic foot cage for their whole life. That's where that one came from. That one had started its life, and this is at Rachel and Scott Mosier's farm, B. Hooligan Farm. It's a great farm. They do raw milk. They're the only ones around who do raw milk, but that chicken was raised in a hen house where it was only given 1 cubic foot of space in a cage for its whole life. And now it's free ranging over at that farm, so a great life for that chicken now. They'll spend 24/7 in that cage indoors. They will never see the sunlight. A lot of use of pre-therapeutic antibiotics. Now what that is antibiotics that are given to the chicken as preventative maintenance, so to say. When there's hen houses and there's thousands of birds packed into those hen houses, it's really easy for disease and bacteria to spread from chicken to chicken. They're all right there. And then the egg processing. So, and I'm sure a lot of folks will know this, maybe some folks won't. The eggs that we get in the supermarket, they have to be refrigerated because when they're processed and cleaned, the bloom from the egg, a bloom is a natural film that's on the egg when it's hatched from the chicken. When they process those eggs to put them in the supermarket, it strips the bloom off of it. So if that egg weren't refrigerated, it would go bad really quickly. Whereas eggs that folks can do on their own in their backyard, you keep that bloom on there, you can keep it on the counter for 3 weeks. It can stay for 3 weeks, and sometimes even a little bit longer in the fridge. Now the eggs that folks, and us included, we get in the supermarket, you have to keep them refrigerated because there's not that bloom on there. And by the time they end up in our refrigerator, they have been in processing from cleaning and collecting and harvesting the eggs and shipping them for 2 weeks. So by the time we get them, they really only have a week left in their lifespan. So healthier eggs equal healthier people. I should have brought an egg today, but the eggs from the supermarket versus like a free-range, farm-raised egg, when you crack open the yolk, you can tell the difference. A supermarket yolk, yellow, an egg where chickens are able to roam around a little bit and see the sunlight and forage in the ground, a bright, healthy orange yolk. Should have brought an egg today, but maybe next time. It eliminates food waste. So this is a really cool fun fact. If there were 2 chickens attached to every household in the US and every kitchen in the US, there would be no egg commerce. Egg commerce would not need to exist. The food scraps that we throw away from our kitchens can go right to the chickens, and that can produce enough eggs if every household had 2 chickens for egg commerce to not exist. So instead of throwing it away, you can put it right back into the chickens. And a little bit later, I think it's Miss Charlene, right? You will have a chart or a graphic of all the other municipalities, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Chantel.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that, Chantel. Yeah, she'll have the graphic on that, but almost every other municipality that borders Excelsior Springs, just from the top of my head, Liberty allows backyard chickens. Lawson,
Holt allows chickens.
Yeah, there's quite a few municipalities around here that have legalized chickens. And then people will flock to Excelsior Springs. And we're a great testimony to that. I mean, we could not find 10 acres of land within an hour of Denver for less than $1 million. People want, especially our generation, people want to get back to the land. People want to homestead. They're disconnected from where their food comes from, and people, I mean, not everybody wants to be a big commercial operation farmer, but people want to homestead, and that was that was the reason that brought us out here, and I think a lot of people can share that sentiment. So maybe why not hens in the backyard? Their noise is one, and everybody who's heard a rooster, I'll share on that a little bit later. No roosters is part of my suggested bylaws, but hens, they're a little bit noisy. When they lay an egg, the whole flock celebrates together. That's why they get real loud. The smell, and everybody smelt it. Everybody's smelt the manure smell before. It's quite a good smell. Animal suffering. Not just like dogs. There's people who take really good care of their animals and really good care of their dogs, and some people who don't do the greatest job, and that can happen with chickens as well. There will be people who tend to their chickens and tend to their flocks really well, but there are people who might not tend to them as well, and that can create animal suffering. Human disease, that's another one. Having a backyard flock just right there, next to a house, that could have some potential for a little bit of disease spread to humans. Disposal of the chicken waste, all of that manure that they're spreading on the ground and all of that bedding that you put in their coops, it's got to be disposed of somehow. So that might create a logistical problem for the municipality. Vermin that come with keeping hens, because hens, they are a big red target for raccoons, coyotes, so on and so forth. And then, in my research, I found that when municipalities legalize the keeping of backyard hens, they assume a little bit of the risk. It's inevitable. There's going to be people who have backyard flocks, and if something happens, that is, I don't know the legality of it, but it's the municipality that assumes the risk. My bylaw suggestions would be no roosters. I know everybody's on a different page with animals and hens here, but without a rooster, hens can still lay eggs. They're constantly laying eggs. It's about 1 per hen per day on average throughout the year. So no roosters, because roosters are really loud. So without roosters, just a normal flock of hens, the females, it's just as loud as a dog. Normal maintenance of bedding. If you're constantly adding straw to the bedding, that manure, it's being absorbed in the urine from the chickens, it's being absorbed by the bedding, and it keeps the smell down. And it's cool because the bedding can be used for composting or gardening. 10 square feet per hen in the run. The run is the outside area. That's where they can run around. 10 square feet per hen in the run, and 3 square feet per hen in the coop. That's legally free range. In the USDA eyes, that's free range, 10 and 3. And I suggest a bylaw on limiting the maximum amount of hens, so people aren't running huge businesses in their backyard. And if folks want to do bantam-sized hens, that's just a smaller hen. They're a third the size of normal hens, so maybe account for that as well. On the coop and the run, poultry netting buried 18 inches deep. If you bury it 18 inches deep into the ground, you won't have a problem with vermin. That's coyotes and that's raccoons included, as long as you've tried to make it as Fort Knox as you can. And the coop, not drafty. There needs to be some ventilation at the top of the coops, but not on the bottom, because a drafty coop at the bottom, during the winter the chickens will freeze if there's a draft at the bottom. But if you put the vents at the top, all of the fumes from the manure and urine go to the top of the coop, and it blows it out. So it creates a healthy environment for the hens. A purchasable permit. When folks are looking into having a backyard flock, they can purchase a permit. Now the cost of that permit, it would cover the wages of personnel from the municipality conducting inspections. Now maybe we have a purchasable permit every year, maybe it's just once. Upon the purchase of that permit, an inspection will be completed upon the construction, or have inspection of the coop and the flock annually. Animal control to investigate and inspect the living conditions in the flock after the second complaint of any bylaws. So somebody calls up once, hey, it smells really bad. And then another time, hey, they're really, really loud. Maybe have animal control come and investigate it after that. And I'm hoping the cost of the permits can compensate, it can directly compensate animal control and their wages for that. The coop and the run a certain distance away from the nearest dwelling unit of the property owner, and then a certain amount of feet from the property line. An egg cleaning procedure required for the sale of eggs. Now, eggs, when we were working at that farm, we wouldn't clean them. The ones that we would buy, we would just take them straight from when we picked them and put them right in our car, and just crack them in the pan, and that's the way we enjoy it, because they last really long that way. But maybe we have a bylaw where there's a required cleaning process. What that looks like is just soapy water, getting some gloves that are like almost washcloths, and just doing a quick clean of the egg to remove all of the manure from the egg. Bedding to be normally removed from the coop or the run, and ideally composted, but I know not everybody here who's going to have hens is going to be gardening as well. It's perfect for gardening, it's perfect for compost, but there will be folks who don't do that. And I think it's a possibility for the municipality to get a contract with a local arborist just to take all of that, or local farms. That is gold to local farms and local arborists. So, that covers my last point. And in closing, I'd just like to have Miss Valley share a point, because Miss Valley actually, Miss Valley is one of the reasons we found out about this, and she was just telling me a really wonderful story about her family's history with farming. So maybe you could share a little bit of that real quick.
So when I was young, my grandparents retired and they moved away, but a lot of summers we would go visit, and my grandfather had chickens, and I just remember being a little girl chasing around with grandfather collecting chickens. My kids had that with my parents, and I'm just hoping that I can stay in this community and provide that for my grandchildren. That's all.
Thank you. And that's why everybody wins with hens in Excelsior Springs. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Very good job. Dr. Rucker, Melissa Davis, do you have anything that you'd like to add? Any thoughts?
Well, let's go over he talked about the human disease component, and if you're looking at limitation on the number of hens in a backyard, and I've discussed this with Clay County Health Department too, the concern for human disease is really with the people owning the chickens. It's not to the general public. There are a couple of diseases, Campylobacter, Salmonella, which are spread in the droppings of the chickens that people can get. But again, that's a concern to the people that are raising the chickens. It's not a concern to the community. If you limit the number of hens, again, histoplasmosis is one other one. Again, that's from cleaning. But again, that's a concern to the people that are raising the chickens. It's not a general concern for the public. You talked about, we talked about avian influenza. That's one you're going to hear about. Avian influenza, when we heard about that, which is what caused your egg shortage a year ago, because when influenza gets in a big commercial flock of 100,000 birds, they depopulate the whole herd to stop the spread. Again, that's not going to be much of a factor in small flocks like this. It's not going to spread. It's really not a concern generally to the humans. So to the humans, even though it's up there, generally speaking, it's, again, anything there is to the people that are taking care of the flock, and not to the general public.
I just wanted to add, I did reach out to a couple of municipalities. Smithville, their police department will go on animal control related calls relating to chickens. The officer I spoke to there said in her 8 years, it's been 6 years since she's had a chicken related animal control call. I did also speak to Liberty Animal Control, and most of their chicken related calls are actually dog related calls, because it's a hunting predator. So as far as damage to the coop, killing chickens, digging under the coop, chasing chickens, causing property damage to chicken owners, that kind of thing. So their chicken problems are more dog problems than chicken problems. So that's just what I wanted to relay to you about the some of the other municipalities and the issues that they have.
Good, thank you. I appreciate you doing that research. So, quick question. How long before you begin getting eggs? Trevor, I think you probably know this question, but if you have a small flock of 3 to 6 hens, how long before you would start seeing eggs, and then what is the life of a chicken?
Yeah, that's a great question. So from the birth of a chicken up to the first egg is 18 weeks. And the life of a chicken, I want to say 5 to 10 years.
3 to 5.
Sorry, yeah.
I thought I'd heard
3 to 5 years,
Depending on the
probably.
predators.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Predators.
18 weeks to the first egg. And if folks aren't going from chicks, if folks are getting hens from a local farm that are called pullets, which is at 18 weeks, it's 3 weeks on the new food until that first egg has come out that has been given its nutrition by the new food that they're feeding up.
So there's not like an acclimation to, like when you replant your, I don't know, I'm not a
Sure.
gardener, but when you replant a flower and it has to sit for a couple of years before it blooms, it's not like that 18 weeks. It's not just because you've moved, it's the age of the chicken.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And then just the biggest concern is I won't keep going into the food. It's kind of irrelevant.
So what kind of support or resources would residents need if we allowed backyard chickens?
Yeah. Now I thought a lot about this, and the problem that I just mentally run into is whether this is somebody from the community volunteering, or if it's some type of elected position and they would be paid to do it. That's kind of where I have a hard time. You know, if it's going to be somebody who's elected, who is on the clock and earning to do it, I know that can be a big expenditure, you know, to the city. But what resources people need is just in short, YouTube. We did for all of our chicken, everything can be learned on YouTube. Everything up there was learned on YouTube, essentially. A place to get food, you know, Tractor Supply, they have a really good non-GMO chicken feed option. And, you know, in an ideal world, would everybody be composting the removed bedding? Yes, but that's not the world we live in. I think some type of agreement with an arborist or a local farm to be coming once a month to pick up the bedding, I think, is the only other one.
I think that would be anticipated to be a cost on the property owner,
Oh, great.
as
okay.
I don't see the city having a funding source to do that.
Yeah, that would kind of kill two birds with one stone, not cost the city money, and it would just be at the property owner expense. It's a great idea.
So, in our area, egg production, where you're talking about the hens that are laying an egg once a day, that's because those hens are under lights 24/7. And in our locale, you're going to see egg production until fall. It's going to drop off, and it's going to stay down until springtime comes back, and the light comes back. So it's not like these hens are going to be laying eggs every day for all the time. Not here, unless you're putting lights on them. Okay, so that's one thing. And you know, I saw chickens at the clinic more than you would imagine. And one of the things problematic for us is they are classified as livestock under all the federal laws. And so that limits then the antibiotics and things like that can be used in a chicken. And the problem that the clinic has for that standpoint is that any antibiotic that's approved for chickens is because they're getting sold to commercial producers that are raising hundreds of thousands of birds. So those antibiotics are produced in 55-gallon drums. So to find an antibiotic that can be used in the small flock is problematic. Now we have ways of doing it, but you know, again, it's not. But we see chickens all the time at the clinic, so. And people spend a crazy amount of money on them sometimes.
So Melissa, you probably have seen conflicts between neighbors when it is about a pet that you are attached to and that you have a great deal of ownership over. Do you see, I mean, how have you seen those issues be resolved, or have you had to step in?
You know, if there's property damage from two dogs fighting, or a dog killing a cat, or a dog injuring another pet, as far as compensation, that's small claims court. That's not anything the city or the police department or animal control has a hand in.
Right.
And there have been some pretty heated disagreements between neighbors over just a dog pooping in their yard and not picking it up. So I think that if your neighbor's dog were to get in your chicken coop, it could get pretty heated, I would assume. And so as far as conflict resolution, you know, all you can do is make a citation or have the neighbor sign a complaint and let it continue its natural path, of course of action after that.
Are there any specific areas in our city where backyard chickens should not be allowed?
Yeah, just I've seen the aerial view of how close some of these houses are together. I would think so. I mean, even a minute from our house, some of them are a little too close together for that to happen. So yeah, I think so.
So,
Yeah.
so we don't have a ban on chickens. I hear people use the word the city has banned chickens, and that's not exactly, well, that's not true. We have a standard that says it is that in a residential zoning district, we require a 500-foot setback to any dwelling unit and a 100-foot setback on an agricultural zoning district to any building occupied or used by human beings. So what we're really talking about is, do you change that 500-foot setback that is currently in the zoning code? And you know, obviously that is at the heart of all of this discussion. Mm-hmm. Is there a suggestion on, or have you seen, we'll hear what other communities have done, but have you, any of you, experienced it, or did you get any feedback from Smithville or Liberty, Melissa, about what they?
Liberty's is 100 feet from, they have to have all of their neighbors' permission as well.
Oh, so they have to have like a signature.
100 feet from any occupied dwelling and all of the neighbors' permission. Smithville is a 50 feet from the nearest neighbor, an annual permit.
Oh.
So they have to apply for a permit annually. No roosters and a maximum of 10 hens.
We can't do that.
No roosters in Smithville, 50 feet from the nearest neighbor, and an annual permit at a $30 annual permit. That's Smithville. Liberty was, all the neighbors had to sign permission, said that they didn't mind if their neighbor had a coop 100 feet from the nearest dwelling. And there are other examples of that in some of the other municipalities.
Melissa, did Liberty have a maximum number of hens too?
Liberty, yes, I believe is 8.
That's not correct.
8 hens, no roosters.
Liberty is 6 per single family residence that is less than 30,000 square foot lot. And then if you have
That's what their zoning code says.
if you have 30,000 square foot lot, which doesn't really apply to a lot of our properties here, then you can have a maximum of 10 hens.
Why don't you go ahead and put your chart up and we'll have you share. So we asked Chantel as our city planner to just go out and look at a number of different communities and what they are allowing. So we'll have her share what she's found.
So going off of what Melissa said, with Liberty, you do have to have the permission of your neighbors. You'll also have to have a minimum 100 foot from any property line and 300 feet from any residential structure which is not the owner of the chicken. Chickens shall be kept in a fenced or enclosed structure, and there are absolutely no roosters. And Liberty also has a hen permit that can be renewed every 2 years for theirs. Lee Summit is a maximum of 6 female chickens. Roosters are prohibited. Minimum 10 foot from the property line and 40 feet from the nearest building, with a minimum of 2 square footage per chicken, with a maximum of 4 square footage per chicken. And then no dog or cat which kills a chicken running at large would be considered a dangerous animal. And then let me scroll down. So
I talked to Liberty too just last week, and they said that they do not consider dogs that kill a chicken a dangerous, potentially dangerous dog.
I saw that in a lot of them. So then Gladstone is a maximum of 10 chickens with less than a minimum of 103,680 square foot, which is 3 acres, which doesn't apply to a lot of our lots here in the city. And they must also have a fowl permit, and all chickens will be kept in a covered enclosure and must have an enclosed run area. These enclosures will be kept to the rear yard and designed with minimized visual impact. And they are to be kept 10 feet from any property line and at least 50 feet of any residential structure, deck, or porch that's not owned by the permittee. And then coops cannot exceed 100 square foot. Grandview is a maximum of 4 single family residential districts, only the female chickens in an enclosed area, with a minimum requirement of 150 feet from the nearest dwelling or place of business, which is not the owner's residence of the chickens, and they must also be kept enclosed. Belton is a maximum of 2 chickens per acre. Roosters are prohibited, and they shall be kept in an enclosure with a minimum of 75 feet of the nearest portion of any building occupied by a human. And then KCMO is maximum of 15 with at least 100 feet from any nearest occupied building with the enclosure required. All areas must be spaded and limed every 3 months from April to December. A rooster which crows will not be kept within 300 feet of a residence or dwelling. Parkville is 15 maximum, at least 500 feet from the nearest occupied building, and it must be confined. No rooster which crows will be kept 500 feet from any dwelling. Independence has kind of a different scale on things. So from 0 to 6 chickens, no roosters. They are to be kept in a fenced enclosed coop or cage. Setback from the property line is at least 6 feet and 50-foot setback from any other residence. And then 6 to 20 chickens, no rooster, is that same kept enclosure, but with 6 foot and 100-foot setback from any other residence. And 20 plus chickens, no roosters, are also kept in an enclosure of 6 feet with 200 feet setback. Smithville has a maximum of 10 hens. Roosters are prohibited. You must have a fowl permit that's renewed annually. Chickens must be kept in an enclosed coop and have a run area. All coops must be at least 50 feet from a neighboring residence. North Kansas City is a maximum of 3. Fully enclosed pen, minimum 100 feet from a nearest occupied building are in use in any way by a human, and minimum 25-foot property line. Chickens are to be kept in enclosure on all sides of the coop, where the coop is kept to be spaded and limed once every 3 months during the months of April through December, and no rooster which crows shall be kept within 300 feet of any residence.
So you see a lot of similarities in the code, and this is generally how we go about doing our research for any code we set up. One of the questions I noticed on the Excelsior Citizen that somebody asked is, you see the word fowl up there. Somebody asked if ducks would be allowed. So by a show of hands of those of you here, how many of you were at all interested in allowing ducks? A couple. Okay. Okay.
Duck eggs are good too.
Well, they are. Much larger, I think. And then we've had a question from online about portable coops or chicken tractors. So in zoning code, we look at, and you see it, a minimum of so many feet from someone's home or from a neighboring facility. So you see us looking at that, and so if you have a chicken tractor moves your coop around so that you're continually getting good green grass.
Also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
On that, then you wouldn't have to put the line down, correct? Because you keep moving your structure. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out how to address that if that's going to be something that would be allowed, because from a zoning perspective, that changes your distance to houses and to neighbors. And so those are things that we have to take into consideration when we're looking at this particular suggestion. And then a question about whether or not yard waste facility would accept chicken waste, and I simply don't know that answer. So I'll have to ask that question and get an answer for that. Any other comments that any of you could think of up here at on the dais? No?
I just, real briefly, I did speak with someone from 4-H. So I think that if there were to be someone who wanted to do a 4-H project, that might also be considered with a permit and allow that student or that 4-H participant to, between the ages of 5 and 18, I believe, they could manage raising chickens or along the same lines, not necessarily to have a coop, but to do a 4-H project.
One other question that we were asked online was whether or not backyard chickens impact property values or affect the real estate market dynamics. And we have asked that question of the Clay County Assessor's Office. We've not gotten that answer back yet, so we'll share that answer when we do get that answer. So we have 3 people who've signed up to speak today. Our first will be Braden Martin on St. Louis Avenue.
Those of you who never met me, Miss Frederick's my name. I'm born and raised here, graduated in 2000, lived here my whole life. I'm for the chickens. I don't think it's a bad thing. What is it? But my questions were more for like what was addressed. No permanent structure really. If I go, I want to do like a chicken tractor base.
Yeah.
That would reduce on manure because they wouldn't be on a permanent. They wouldn't tear up my soil. They wouldn't make it smell because they would actually help mow the yard. And that was kind of my pros, and I was just gathering information. I'm just brought in new on the topic a couple weeks ago. I don't have Facebook or any of that, so I was just trying to be a part and keep it nice to meet you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Have good.
Thank you. Jonathan, is it Hein? What's your last? Minner.
Yeah. So I grew up on a farm, grew up with chickens, and then so when I came to Excelsior Springs, I was thinking, oh yes, I get out of Kansas City and we get awesome chickens. But so I read through the code. I was so close. Threw up my chicken structure, got 15 chickens, and realized, oh, I'm not really zoned as A1. So I met all the requirements for A1, but I did get rid of the chickens obviously I can't have chickens. So, I was able to have those chickens. Now, I don't have a neighbor adjacent to me, so I was able to fit within the 100 feet from a nearest dwelling outside of my own, 25 feet from the nearest property line. So I don't know if that's going to include a lot of our citizens here in Excelsior Springs. It worked out really well for me, had I actually been zoned as 1A. But I think those requirements as they sit for agriculture zone A, would be pretty good, at least in my circumstance. The chickens, my kids love them. They're awesome. They're really good pets, like you said, but they're really, I've had neighbors. I actually had people stop as they were driving past my property and just say, your chickens are awesome to watch because they really are. If you just watch them, they're very peaceful, animals. They don't make a ton of noise until they're, having eggs, but they're really great animals. And so, anyways, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. So you've brought up a good point, Jonathan, and that is when a resident chooses to have chickens, and we have a limit, that tends to be where we have our biggest issue, is that we might say 6 chickens and you have 15, so you're still out of compliance.
Correct.
So then what should the penalty be for an individual that has too many chickens?
Good question. I think many of the, we have laws already on the books on how to deal with people who are out of code compliance.
Mm-hmm.
The police department does a really good job. Animal control does a really good job of policing those things. And so, they go through the procedure. I think right now, I'm not as familiar with how those procedures go about, but Melissa can do a better job of explaining how that works. But I think a lot of the infrastructure is already in place. And to speak a little bit to the educational and what would be required, I think Trevor did a really good job of explaining, if you have the initiative to go get chickens, a lot of them, a lot of us are doing the educational requirements needed, because ultimately if you're getting chickens, you're looking at production, and if you're not taking care of your chickens, you're not getting good production. You're not feeding them good, you're not getting good production. You're not getting good animal management. So I think a lot of our infrastructure is already here, and it's just about adapting it so that we can include as many of our citizens in as possible, while yet maintaining good zoning.
So Melissa, can you talk a little bit, thank you, can you talk a little bit about what happens when somebody is out of compliance?
As far as chickens, no, because recently I've probably been to 6 to 12 homes that have had chickens, and all of them have been compliant with my request to have them remove the chickens from the city. And I have addressed with all of those people that we would be having this meeting and please come and we can go from there. But they've all been compliant in removing chickens. I think currently a citation for non-compliant with, like, you're running at large or not having your city license or a rabies vaccination is about a citation with an $80, $85 fine. So I think as far as that would go, it might fall in line with some of the same standards as just being non-compliant with other animal control type ordinances.
So what happens, and we know this will happen, when somebody thinks it's a great idea to raise chickens until they realize it means you have to get up and make sure they have water when it's freezing out, and that you have to clean up after maybe an attack by raccoons or another vermin, or there are the first time you have to clean a coop, and I have cleaned coops, so I can say this. You may change your mind about having chickens. So are you set up to be able to take chickens?
Absolutely not.
I mean, because you wouldn't be able to really just hand them to somebody else because they're at their limit.
No, absolutely not. Normally, if someone were to purchase chickens and decide this isn't for me, they would be responsible for rehoming them or finding another farm or coop to put them in.
And does that have Dr. Rucker, does that have a concern for taking chickens from one area and putting them in with chickens from another?
It does. It does for the person who takes those chickens.
Yes.
Because that's generally how they'll spread disease from one group to the other. But again, that's on them. That's on them, because if they accept them, there's a significant chance that they'll pick up something from the other group.
Is there a way to quarantine them before they would commingle them?
There
perhaps?
is, but it's still a tough deal. It's logistically tough to do that. Yeah. Most, depending, some of them are, if you're buying them from a hatchery, depending on the hatchery, some of them come pre-vaccinated for all the typical diseases that chickens get. Not all hatcheries do that. So if you had a flock that both flocks were vaccinated, that would reduce the chance of spreading something, but it's not always done. Yeah.
We have one more speaker, Ferris Lyons.
Hello. I don't have a lot to say. I was just going to emphasize one point that you guys made. I have 3 little boys. And the main reason that we moved out here is just to get a little bit of space for our kids to be able to work and play outside. We want to foster that kind of life for them. And I think the kind of families that you would have who would want a backyard flock are exactly the sort of families that we want in Excelsior Springs, who are wanting to build strong, warm family bonds, being outside, not just inside all the time playing video games and stuff like that. So yeah, that would be my point of emphasis on what's already been said. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we have answered our questions that have come in online, and thank you, Mackenzie, for taking care of that for us. Are there any comments from any of you or any questions from anybody in the audience that you would like to ask or to have discussed? Sir?
Well, do I need to step closer?
Would you please, so everybody can hear you?
You had made the statement or a question about, is there any area where we would not want to have chickens? And even some of the most lenient chicken law there is, for lack of a better term, would preclude most of our downtown neighbors from having chickens, because most of our lots are 50 by 100, and in your higher density neighborhoods, you would not be able to meet those setbacks and requirements. Just a comment about that.
That is, as people made the comment that one of their biggest concerns was the cost of eggs, so they felt like they needed to be raising chickens. One of the biggest concerns is you don't see in many of this code, you don't see chickens and coops being allowed in an R2, R3, or R4 or any type of multi-family housing, which makes sense. But what you should be aware of is most of this side of town is zoned R2, even though it's single-family housing. So if we were to adopt a code that says no R2, 3, or 4, if you live in an area, you'll need to check with us to see what you're zoned. And if you're zoned in multifamily housing, I would anticipate that we would not be allowing, that staff would be recommending that we not allow chicken coops, because stop and think about a duplex on a 50-foot or 75-foot wide lot, and now you have 2 homes that want to have chickens. So you have twice as much there in that space. So those are conversations we'll have with planning and zoning, and we'll discuss that, and we'll do more research to see how other communities are doing it. One other question. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned the, if you have frozen water, it's basically up to that owner. I'm just curious though, if you're looking at dogs or cats and those that are being neglected, we have the resources to come and take that on. I'm curious what that looks like if that happens in the chicken world. And then the other question, I did some research and found similar what you found, Chantel. Did you see anything owner versus rental properties?
I have, yes.
Okay. Did it require ownership of the property?
That you could not be a renter.
Okay. Okay. And I'm a beekeeper, love chickens, so people have chiggers in their yard and all those other things. They are extremely beneficial to that.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just to answer your question very quickly, we have taken chickens and been able to pull them into the animal control center until we've been able to place them, find a placement for them.
Okay.
We don't have a coop, and they're just there temporarily in dog kennels. But we have impounded them for safekeeping from neglectful.
Just as long as we're not walking away saying, well, that's
no, we do take them if there's a neglectful situation. We can impound them. Yeah.
You'd be shocked at what they actually house down there at times, I'm sure. Any other comments or questions? None? Well, we said we'd try to get out of here by 5, and it's 5 minutes till 5. First off, again, as a reminder, this is not a final discussion. We'll be doing this again at a planning and zoning meeting. You can always find our planning and zoning agendas online. And so you can find those at the city's website. We will put a notice back out just so you are aware of it. If you've signed in, we'll make sure, if we have an email address from you, we'll make sure to let you know when this discussion goes to planning and zoning. So if you want to add an email, you can come up and certainly add your email if you'd like to. So we will be furthering this discussion, and we'll be doing it through our planning and zoning process. In addition to the planning and zoning process, which is the zoning code changes, there are other changes to the code in the nuisance code and the domestic animal and fowl code that would also have to be changed. So there's a process we'll go through to address all of that for us. And again, thank you very much to Excelsior Citizen for posting this, streaming this online for us today, so that if you weren't able to be here, you could still watch it. If you want to re-watch it, you can visit the YouTube channel of Excelsior Citizen, and they'll be sharing it there. And again, thank you to staff. Thank you to Mackenzie Cole for monitoring the Facebook live feed for us with the questions. And thank you all very much for coming. We appreciate the discussion. If you come up with a great idea, please don't hesitate to call community development and share that with us. We'll continue gathering information right up until we make decisions. Thank you all for being here today.
It's like maybe 20 minutes north of Denver.
Okay.
So